In this report, I will explain how I got the courage to quit my old life and fly away. This report will help you quit stalling and jump on a jet to paradise. You see, there's nothing wrong with caution. Let me explain why. I've lived several different lives during my 62 years on this planet, including my baseball life, my stoner life, my self-employed life, my college years, my corporate life, and my travel life. I'll show you videos I took all over the world as I explain. Each of these new lives required a transitional period of chaos and change that I went through before I was able to become stable in the next life. It is during times of change that people seem to assume takes courage to transition a new part of your life. Let me explain why I think it requires knowledge instead of courage. I will explain my transition from my stoner life into my self-employed life, so you'll understand how I got the courage to quit my old life and fly away. It turns out that it is not courage at all that leads to positive changes in your life. I fell in with the wrong crowd when I was about 13 years old. I was selling marijuana in high school by the time I was 15. My mother explained that things could go really bad for me if I didn't change my ways. She said, if you get arrested before the age of 18, your life might not be completely ruined. But if you keep selling after 18, it could change your life forever. Stay with me for a second. I promise it will become clear how this relates to finding the courage to quit my old life and fly away. My mother explained that I was a smart kid, but I was just bored in high school. If I found something I loved that was legal, I could do it for the rest of my life without going to prison. She knew I wasn't interested in college yet, so she gave me a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. In that book, the author interviews people that became millionaires in the USA. This is the first book I ever read in my life that I could relate to. I learned that not many millionaires went to college. Some didn't even finish high school. These millionaires just started various businesses and learned what they needed along the way. They were self-taught. When they needed new knowledge, they would go find it somewhere or just fake it until they made it. This sounded fantastic to me. Being self-employed sounded more fun to me than college. I didn't go to college until my mid-30s. I'll share that story with you another time. When I finally started reading the book, I was working at a gas station around 16 years old. One day, a kid about 4 years older than me pulled in for gasoline. He was driving a gorgeous red convertible car with the top down. He had two drop-dead gorgeous women with him. It was 1976. They looked like they were all dressed up to go to the disco. They were all wearing bright, shiny colors, beautiful polyester clothes. His life looked like a scene from a Hollywood movie to me. It was Saturday evening. As I filled his tank with gasoline, I heard them say they were going to a disco that night. I didn't know anybody that went to discos. I didn't like disco music. I was a stoner. I did not want to dance, but I wanted to know what world these people lived in. What does their life look like in motion? I'm not sure I would have said it this way at the time, but I was sincerely wondering if there was a better life I could be living. I had to go see with my own eyes. So I went to this disco in the summer of 1976. I didn't want any of my stoner friends to know, so I kept it a secret. I was amazed at how much fun everyone was having. They were all teaching each other how to dance. They were not stoned and mellow. They were high energy, laughing, smiling, and dancing. You could see it in their faces. They really loved to dance. There were beautiful women all over the place. That night changed my life. I wanted that level of energy. I wanted to be around these beautiful women. I felt like I was just in the audience. As I watched, I wondered, could I insert myself into this movie? At about the same time, the book was teaching me that we become like the people that we spend the most time with. I wanted to become like these people. I wanted to be a part of this energy. I wanted to be in this movie. So I started going to the disco once or twice a week at first. I even had two sets of clothes, the stoner clothes that I wore to high school and my disco clothes that I wore out dancing. I also quit smoking and selling weed. I started dating a beautiful girl I met at the disco. I was getting to be a really good dancer. Eventually, I was going out 4 or 5 nights per week. This was an 1821 club, which means there wasn't even alcohol for sale there. After a few months, I even cut my long hair and started wearing disco clothes to high school. I was no longer in the audience watching. I was a character in this movie now. I started to do more of what the book was teaching. Instead of hanging out with friends and getting stoned, I started trying out different businesses. One day I saw a sign on a car for sale. I made a really low offer and they accepted it. I spent a few days cleaning up that old car. I sold it a few days later. I doubled my money. I did this several times before deciding it was my new gig. I spent the last 2 years of high school flipping cars in the day and dancing at night in this whole new world of people. I was making more flipping cars than selling weed, and I didn't have to worry about looking over my shoulder anymore and going to jail. So what does any of this have to do with how I got the courage to quit my old life and fly away? You see, I never would have been able to get the courage to quit my old life and fly away. Nobody can do that. Almost nobody plans and executes their life like that. I just take baby steps, one after another, until I end up walking to a completely different world. Looking back at what I've done, it looks smooth and easy, but it never is. Have you ever seen what movie film looked like before the world went digital? Movies are just a series of plastic film frames that show very little movement between frames, one after another. But when you play the movie back at full speed, single steps look like one smooth motion. But in reality, they just took one step at a time. If they needed to take 100 steps at once, they would never have had the courage or visibility into the future to see that far in advance. The fear would overwhelm us. You can only take one simple step. Put your toe in the water first. Is it warm enough to put your whole foot in next? Yes? Now, put one leg in the water. If that is okay, then put the other foot in the water. I didn't decide to become a disco car flipper in high school. All I did was go to the disco in secret and watch that first day. You see, you can never look at someone else's life and decide to do it yourself. You can only decide to go to the disco and watch the first night for yourself. You can't decide to sell cars the last few years of high school instead of selling weed. You can only decide to buy one car, clean it up, and then put a for sale sign on it. Said more simply, you can't decide to quit dreaming and fly away. You have to just book a round-trip ticket to one place and see if you like it or not. Keep dreaming, that's okay. Just add one little step to your dreams. Buy a ticket. You can't decide to move overseas. You can only decide to go on an exploratory visit. You have to see if you like spending a few weeks there. Then consider whether or not to spend a few months, one step at a time. You can't move overseas to find a new lover and live happily ever after. You can only put a profile up on day one. On day two, you can only decide to go on a date if you find someone interesting. On day three, you decide whether or not to go on a second date, and so on. You have to walk inside 3 or 4 apartments and see what you can get for $300 per month. You have to go to restaurants, open-air markets, and grocery stores and see how much everything you want to buy costs overseas. You have to find, buy, and eat $2 meals before you decide if you're willing to eat $2 meals. You can only gather one data point at a time. You can only make one decision at a time. You can't have enough information to decide if quitting your old life and flying away for good is right for you. But you can't do any of that until the plane lands in the new country. So you just start with buying the ticket. You don't need to decide anything. You just need to book a flight. Buy a round-trip flight your first time. Don't even try to decide anything when you're overseas. You should probably wait to decide when you return. You may even want to take a second trip for even longer before you make a final decision. The thing that is stopping you is that you are trying to make life decisions about living overseas while your feet are still on the ground in your home country. That is impossible, and you should not judge yourself for being indecisive. Your indecisiveness is protecting you, so it is a good thing. All you can do now is take one action, gather one data point, and save decisions for later. You have to start by going to the disco and seeing if it looks like fun. You have to buy one car and clean it up. You don't have to decide if you should change your life. You don't have enough information yet. Listen to your intuition when it raises fears and concerns. Understand that your fear is protecting you from making uninformed life decisions. That is good, not bad. There's nothing wrong with you. Just go to the disco and watch people dance right now and save your decisions for later. So the truth is, I never had the courage to quit my old life and fly away forever. I only had the balls to book one round-trip flight to go see the place with my own eyes. Could you please help me with something? You've probably watched our guest star interviews on our guest star playlist. I interview people that have retired overseas. They share valuable information such as cost of living, safety concerns, finding love overseas, healthcare experiences, and money problems. If you'd like to share something that you have learned living overseas, please come to vagabondbuddha.com, click the More tab, click the Contact Me tab, and tell me about what you would like to share with my channel. Yes, it is true that 95% of my flights are one-way tickets now, but that is only because I've done this many times before and there's no uncertainty in that decision for me. One step at a time does not require courage. When I was in your shoes, I didn't have courage. All I had was uncertainty. I took one action at a time, gathered one data point at a time, and made decisions much later when I had all the evidence in front of me after seeing it with my own eyes. So now you know the truth about how I got the courage to quit my old life and fly away. I never did have that courage. I never quit anything until after my exploratory visit. It didn't take courage. It took knowledge and certainty gathered with my own eyes, with my feet on the ground. Courage was never necessary. By the time I was making that decision, the need for courage was replaced by knowledge and certainty. By the way, I have a course called the Retire Overseas course that goes over all of this and hundreds more ideas like it. Ideas I've learned living overseas for the last 16 years in 67 countries. For more on that and how I fired my boss and traveled the world for 16 years, just click the first and second links in the notes below this YouTube video. Thanks for listening to how I got the courage to quit my old life and fly away. This is Dan of Vagabond Awake, the YouTube channel for vagabondbuddha.com. The world is your home. What time will you be home for dinner?